In Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, a young woman is on the run from foul creatures and monsters, sent by an unknown intent on stealing the woman's powers. Powers she is yet to tame and control. Along the way, she bumps into Doctor Strange, and together they attempt to fend off the impending threat from their power-desiring adversary. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a fun and entertaining entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Perhaps even one of the more purely fun and entertaining entries to date. This is partially because the story and the characters of the film are traditional and basic. A bad person wants power, the good person must stop them. There's not much more to the film than that, but the simplicity of the story allows the action and set pieces and horror elements to step up and thrive. The characters are as equally as standard and traditional. We get to dive into Doctor Strange a little bit more. We learn about his feelings towards Rachel McAdams as Christine Palmer, as well as his current outlook on life as a superhero. It's nothing mind-blowing or unique, but it does add a little bit of intrigue to the character that Benedict Cumberbatch does a good job at exploring and portraying. This is a Doctor Strange with a sense of duty, one that he elevates above his personal life despite the repercussions such actions may have on himself. The newest addition to the MCU is that of America Chavez, played by Xochitl Gomez. For much of the film, she is a sidekick, often panicking and screaming and borderline crying. She is a damsel in need of rescuing, essentially. Along the way, we learn about her origins and what makes her so special to the primary antagonist. These elements do a great job of making America likeable and engaging, and the actor does a good job of bringing the character to life. The problem is that beyond the character's origins and the exploration of her powers later in the film, the actor has little else to work with. In many ways, she's just another quippy, charming sidekick with a distinct lack of quips or humour. It also doesn't help when the main story surrounding this character is resolved very quickly with little explanation. Returning characters like Wong do a great job at adding some humour to affairs, but Wong also gets involved in some of the larger action set pieces, as well as the more dramatic and thrilling horror moments. He continues to be a delight to watch and a great companion to Doctor Strange. Elizabeth Olsen is perhaps the best thing about Multiverse of Madness. To say much about her character is to dive into major spoiler territory. Suffice to say, she is continuing her arc from the TV show WandaVision, which serves in a way as a setting off point for this movie. As a viewer of WandaVision, it's satisfying to know just how important and essential that show was to this film. Without the context of that show, most if not all of Wanda's scenes will lack context and explanation. There are a few lines here and there that sum things up for viewers not familiar with the show, but they won't elicit the same emotional response. Wanda is given great compelling motivations in this film, and Elizabeth gets to display a large array of emotion throughout it, from rage to disappointment to great sadness. This film showcases just how good of an actress and how big of a presence she can be. The final character of note is that of the villain. The villain of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is one of the best the MCU has ever had. They are terrifying, constantly pushing forward, never relenting. In many ways, they are an unstoppable classic horror movie monster, and all the heroes can do is run. The film, thanks to great direction from Sam Raimi, does a brilliant job of making the villains scary and the sequences they are in very tense and unnerving. I never quite knew what was going to happen next when the villain was on screen, nor did I know just how far they were going to go in terms of horror or violence. In many ways, Multiverse of Madness is a horror film. The film has a certain intensity, a certain uncomfortable, tense tone that runs throughout it. Sam Raimi, a director of horror movies primarily, brings his expertise aboard the MCU and really shows off his skills. He does a good job at establishing the stakes, making you care about the characters and constantly adding thrills and surprises and shocks, alongside unpleasant but good imagery. A good score from Danny Elfman and a relentless fast pace help matters too. While the opening third of the movie suffers a bit from exposition, as well as a need to bring everyone up to speed and establishing what the film is, the rest of the film is a thrill ride. Sam does a great job at constantly keeping us engaged, with action scenes never feeling forced or unnecessary, with horror moments and scares that rely on more than just shock and surprise, and with dialogue that is at times cheesy and campy, but does the job at pushing the story or developing a character. This is a Sam Raimi superhero film, and I would argue that it's one of, if not his best superhero films to date. What that means is that if you're not a fan of Sam Raimi, particularly his superhero films, then this might not be for you. As a Marvel movie focusing on the multiverse, there are naturally some big surprises and fan-pleasing moments in it, one of which was revealed in the trailer, and putting it short, these surprises work well in the film, not at all taking the spotlight away from the more prevalent characters or the story. These surprises also do a good job at expanding on the MCU we have, as well as hinting at what's to come, while also fulfilling some long-term fan requests, perhaps as a one-off occurrence. In terms of the action and the special effects, this is where the film doesn't seem able to nail things. The action is very fun and well choreographed and conveyed. The vast array of magical abilities, the use of colour and comedy all come together to make every action scene feel unique and special. Where things falter is in the CGI. The quality of the CGI is all over the place, with the majority of the first third suffering from poor CGI, in favour of the later, more important parts of the film having pretty good CGI. Clearly, budget or timing was an issue, with most of the time and resources being spent on the later sequences, as opposed to the earlier ones. This means the film looks better as it progresses, but ideally, the early scenes should look just as good. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness suffers a little bit from having a very traditional, basic story, with characters that are for the most part lacking in originality. It also has some cheesy and campy moments that could have been rewritten. These flaws are noticeable and let the film down, but the action and the horror are exceptional. The surprises and the thrills are fun, and altogether it makes for one of the more enjoyable entries in the MCU in recent years, even when it has some unsettling and slightly tense and uncomfortable moments.